You didn't start in marble halls. You started in Crumlin, in a small flat where the walls heard more shouting than silence, where men worked themselves into the grave just to feed the meter. You weren't born with greatness. You were born with fists. You were 5 when you threw your first punch, not because you wanted to fight, but because you had to. Dublin wasn't a fair place. It didn't hand out favors. If you didn't defend your name, someone else owned it, and you were never one to be owned. You kicked footballs in alleyways and slapped boys twice your size. Your shoes had holes. Your knuckles didn't. You weren't chasing belts, just space, just respect, just a chance to be heard. The boxing gym came first. The MMA gym came next. Then the obsession, the routines, the silence after everyone else left, the sparring when no one was watching. You didn't train like you had talent, you trained like you had no other choice. Because you didn't. You were supposed to be a plumber. You carried pipes through rain, scraped rust off cold metal, all while your mind floated to head kicks and triangle chokes. You smelled of oil, but you dreamed of glory. People laughed when you said you'd be world champion. You didn't laugh. You didn't even blink. You just stared ahead, the way killers do when the job is already done in their head. Your bank account read 0. Your fridge held more dreams than food, but that belief? Untouchable. And Dee? She stood with you, every fight, every bruise, every time you came home with cracked ribs and an empty pocket. She said, keep going. So you did. You knocked out men in tiny halls with bad lighting and no medical staff. You won belts nobody saw. You got on welfare just to afford food between fights. Then Cage Warriors happened. Double champ, featherweight and lightweight. You didn't just win, you arrived. And suddenly the whispers started. There's this Irish kid, and the UFC picked up the phone. Vegas didn't know what hit it. You walked in like you already owned it. You said things no one else dared, called your shots, predicted the rounds, knocked men out like it was scripted, but it wasn't. That was just you. You beat Marcus Brimage in your debut. Then you slept Diego Brandao in Dublin and made a whole nation rise. You weren't just a fighter, you were the fight. You talked like Ali, dressed like a boss, and hit like a truck. You ran through Dustin Poirier, flexed on Dennis Cyber, then stared down Jose Aldo. You didn't just want the belt, you wanted the whole damn sport. People said you were just hype, so you made Aldo miss and sleep in 13 seconds. The fastest title fight in featherweight history. You became legend that night. You strutted across the octagon like a king, and the world knew this wasn't hype. This was history. Then you did something no one dared. You moved up 2 weight classes. No tune-ups, no caution. You stepped in against Nate Diaz on 11 days' notice. And for once, your mouth didn't write a check your fists could cash. You got choked out, humbled. They called it the end of the McGregor era. But you came back. And in the rematch, you stood in fire for 5 rounds and answered every question. You didn't just win, you evolved. Then you fought Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title at Madison Square Garden, the UFC's debut in New York. And you painted a masterpiece. Clinical, vicious, beautiful, 2-division champion. First ever. You held both belts over your head, and the sport bowed. Then came Mayweather. Boxing royalty. 49-0. You stepped in after 1 training camp, 1 sport change, 0 tune-ups. The world said you'd embarrass yourself. But you boxed with the best to ever do it for 10 rounds. You didn't win, but you won. $100 million later, you walked out in a suit that cost more than some fighters' contracts. The fight was a spectacle, a business move, a masterclass in marketing, but it pulled you out of the cage, out of the hunger. Because money changes everything, and not always for the better. While you partied in yachts, others climbed. While you sold whiskey, others trained. While you picked fights on Twitter, real killers circled. And one of them was Khabib. You returned to the UFC in 2018 and walked straight into fire. The build-up was dark, personal, violent, but the fight wasn't close. You were mauled, controlled, drowned. You tapped. And everything that followed, the brawl, the suspensions, the silence, it felt different, like a piece of the empire cracked, maybe even collapsed. You said you were back. 2020. New McGregor. New mindset. You head-kicked Donald Cerrone into the shadow realm in 40 seconds. A clean performance. Efficient. Ruthless. You whispered, the king is back. Then Dustin again. First, a KO loss. Then, your leg snaps in half in round 1. You sit, broken, screaming, not from the pain, but from the anger, the fear, because now the whispers are louder. He's done. Now they say you're more businessman than fighter. They say Proper 12 made you soft, that the Ferrari lifestyle replaced the fire. They say you're washed, but you know the truth. They can take your rankings, your belt, your mystique, but that cage? that's still home, because you remember what it felt like to be broke and hungry. And sometimes, memory is more powerful than motivation. You still train, still grind, still dream, because in your head, you're not finished. You never were. Now they worship guys named Islam, Ilya, and Paddy. They crown new kings every month. But none of them walk like you, none talk like you, none make the world stop when they enter the room. Because say what you want, but when Conor McGregor fights, everyone watches, even the haters. You made this game. You built the billion-dollar UFC machine. You're not just a fighter, you're the blueprint. They ask, why not retire? You've done it all. Fame, fortune, history, but you're not wired like that, because you were never chasing gold. You were chasing something else, immortality. You want that one more shot, that walk, that roar, that left hand finding a chin and silencing an arena. It may never come, or it might. That's the beauty of the fight game. And deep down, you don't fear losing, you fear being forgotten. And that's why you're still here, because even if your time has passed, even if your name fades from the rankings, even if your body doesn't do what it used to, that kid from Crumlin? He's still inside you, and when the cage door shuts, when the lights go down, when the world holds its breath, you still believe, because legends don't retire, they haunt.